Welcome back, everybody. It's the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast brought to you by Reality Sports Online. I'm your host, Scott Bogman. Follow me on the Twitter at Bogman Sports. I'm joined, as always, by Pat Fitzmaurice at Fitz_FF on the Twitter machine. Fitzy, how was your 4th of July, man?
Yeah, it was pretty good, Bogman. I got my share of grilled meats, and I'm really excited for the post 4th of July because it seems like now we are, downhill, rolling with momentum toward the football season. So let's do it, man. Let's strap in.
Let's get there. Yeah, it is absolute, all the way in prep time here, and we're going to be going over. Last week we did the AFC hard to read scenarios. This week we're going to be doing the NFC, and to do that with us this week we brought in Shane Manila. I'm afraid to read your Twitter here at Shane is the worst. I didn't do that. That's not me. That is Shane. He explained it to me before, because I've done at least 1 or 2 podcasts on the Black Book with Shane, and Shane is the best to me. But you can find him at Shane is the worst on Twitter. Dynasty Trades HQ, Trades in 5, DL Football, and Fantasy Data NFL. You can be found all over the place, right, Shane?
Yeah, pretty much anywhere you look. Like, you just Facebook, Instagram. Still got some stuff on MySpace if you're searching for fantasy football content. Very underserved community. So I'm still serving the MySpace community.
MySpace, Friendster, he's on all of them. So, how was your 4th? You have a good one?
I ate way too much food.
Very American.
Yep. Ate way too many cinnamon buns. Thought I could take on 3 at one time, and I was incorrect. I won, but I think I lost the battle.
Yeah, winning is losing in that scenario for sure, because you win and you feel accomplished, but then a couple hours later, you're like, I immediately regret this decision. But remember, before we jump in here, I got to tell you guys about some good stuff over at Fantasy Pros. We have another giveaway this month. And this month, it is for a Treylon Burks autographed jersey. I asked if I could be the pristine auction model and maybe get a free one delivered to me. They gave me the stiff arm on that, but you guys can enter right now. This contest, of course, ends at the end of the month, but all you need to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/fantasypros. Take a screenshot, submit it to fantasypros.com/dynasty-contest. That's fantasypros.com/dynasty-contest. You are entered in to win. Do it as soon as possible. And then check out our Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. Our Discord is free to enter, but premium Fantasy Pro subscribers get a whole bunch of other perks, like dozens of extra channels, regularly scheduled AMAs, and interactive voice chats with our analysts. Want to talk fantasy whenever you want or chat with Fantasy Pros analysts? Just check out our Discord at fantasypros.com/chat. Again, that's fantasypros.com/chat. Now, we're going to be going into these NFC scenarios and breaking them down and seeing the ones that are hard to read. And this first one I picked out, maybe it's not hard to read to you guys, but the Eagles running back situation has been in flux for a couple years. Miles Sanders is always the main guy. There's a lot of people that are always in on whoever the backup is. Right now, it's Kenneth Gainwell. Boston Scott is always a fixture of this for the last 3 seasons. Kennedy Brooks was high in our guy Matt Waldman's pre-draft list. He is an undrafted free agent there, and they've had Jason Huntley on the roster too. So, Pat, when you look at the Eagles RBs, is this just a Miles Sanders cut and dry? Do you like to grab and stash a Kenny Gainwell? Is Boston Scott kind of one of those late round deep options you like to throw a dart on? How are you doing this in terms of rostering these players?
Yeah, so I've got Miles Sanders actually on a couple of teams, and it's just sort of he was never an aggressive target of mine, just someone who's sort of wound up on the roster. And, I like him in the short term. I think he's going to have more than 0 touchdowns this year, and it just seems like he is going to be the lead guy there. Gainwell is the guy who confuses me because it seemed like early on last year they were using him pretty aggressively, even in some goal line spots, and then they just sort of pulled back on him entirely. And he fell from 2nd to 4th on the depth chart, it seemed, behind Boston Scott and Jordan Howard. So, but I should probably defer to our guest here, since he lives in the city of brotherly love and might have some more insight than I do on this.
No. Don't blame. Don't make me make the choice here. It's definitely not Miles Sanders, though. That's all I'm going to say. Like, I'm not investing in Miles Sanders. Yeah, he didn't score a lot of touchdowns last year. He scored 0, right? So that's not a lot. And you're like, oh, well, regression, because that's our favorite word. Boston Scott had double the goal line attempts as Miles Sanders last year. And you talked about Kenny Gainwell had a couple carries, too, at the goal line. And Miles Sanders, he had the opposite of whatever it is and knows for the end zone. Like he literally took wrong routes, like just completely running the wrong way, had open lanes. It was like, no, I don't want to get there. So I think he'll definitely score more than 0 touchdowns. I'm going to go out on a limb. He'll score more than 0 touchdowns. I don't think he can be anything better than an RB2 though. And not a high end one. I'm talking like back end. Kenny Gainwell's interesting because they really liked him the first month. I was actually just reading some Roto World, and Denny Carter was brought up a stat. He had the 3rd most routes run for running backs in the first 4 weeks. And then by week 11, he was a healthy scratch. I don't know what to do with that.
Sounds Zach Moss-ish,
Yeah, like we gave you a chance. We didn't like what we saw, and we're not going to do that again. And they brought Jordan Howard in and let him get a ton of work. I like Kennedy Brooks too. He's a guy that I targeted as soon as the UDFA started signing. I said, all right, that's mine. Because I knew whoever ended up with the Eagles was going to be the guy I was going to get because there's a path there.
Yeah.
Kenny Gainwell's a limited player. Miles Sanders has seen his targets drop every year of his career. He's an efficient runner, but that's all he is. So I don't put a lot of hope into him. If I had to choose one player at cost, I'm not doing it. But if I had to choose one player, I guess Miles Sanders.
Well, Miles Sanders, you said he's at best an RB2. Right now, his expert consensus rankings for dynasty leagues is 27. So, he's an RB3 at this point, unless you're in a deeper league. Most leagues are 12 teams. 24, obviously the top 2 regions. So he's going as an RB3. If you can get him at 27, do you think you would take him, Shane, or is that still there's guys in that area that I would much rather have?
No, because I'll talk myself into the upside of, but he's so efficient. And in that rookie year when he had 50 receptions, he looked so good. And then I'll just ignore the fact that he has fumbling injury and it's fantasy. We shouldn't care, right? But he's not a smart football player. He does dumb things. And generally, I wouldn't care.
That won't keep you on the field, though. Like you're a dumb player, you'll get snaps taken away, especially at a churning position like running back, right?
And that's exactly every year he does something really stupid, like just like you have no football sense whatsoever, which makes no sense because the kid's been playing his whole life. And,
right.
It scares me. I don't know. I'd probably pass on him. Like I have enough Miles Sanders in my life. I'm not drafting him in Dynasty, and I'm not going to touch him in redraft.
I got to read about him in the papers and hear about him on the radio. That's enough for me. I don't want to have to depend on his points. I completely understand that. Let's go down to.
Can I just say, Boggs, I do think like someone is going to overachieve this year in this offense because, Jalen Hurts with his running ability and all the RPO stuff they're running, like that seems to create
But the overachiever, I think everyone is pegged as Devontae Smith, right? That's going to be in this offense. He'll outplay his draft spot. That's what, the consensus seems to be.
Yeah, someone overall, but I also think at running back with that offensive line they have, which is one of the better ones in the league. And then just like the RPO stuff seems to help like running back efficiency. Like it freezes those linebackers a little split second more and seems to like give these guys more of a running head start. So maybe it's Gainwell who steps forward. Maybe it is Kennedy Brooks who kind of emerges as like they've shown that they want to use multiple backs. So it's probably not going to be any one guy being a top 10 guy in rushing yards in this offense. But, maybe if Kennedy Brooks like pops right away in training camp in the preseason, he gets a bigger role.
Have you been grabbing and stashing Kennedy?
I think I've got him in one of my leagues. Yeah.
You guys both taking the Sooner. I can't do it. My Texas roots will not let me take the Sooner. But look, I understand. Let me ask you this, Shane, and then we'll end on the Eagles running back situation. But is the Eagles starter in 3 seasons, is he on the roster right now? Starting running back.
Oh, no. Goodness, no. No, it's not Sanders. It's certainly not Boston Scott, who is one of my favorite running backs, who I do own on somewhere in the neighborhood of like 60% of my dynasty leagues, because every year it seems like he gives me a little run. Certainly not going to be Kennedy Brooks. And Jason Huntley is on the roster still too, but he's more of a special teams guy. I can't imagine they're starting running backs on this team. Although I honestly can't imagine most starting running backs are on a roster
in 3 years. Yeah. What
Good
about
point.
next year?
No, still no.
Still no. Okay. Yeah. See, that's and maybe at wide receiver or something, the number one target quarterback, whatever. But yeah, running back, I know that churns out. Let's stay in the NFC East and let's talk about Giants wide receivers, because the number one rated player in ECR on this roster is Kadarius Toney in terms of wideouts, and his ECR is 47, making him barely a wide receiver 4, and he doesn't even want to play for the Giants, it seems. At least that's what he said earlier. Kenny Golladay, who they paid a buttload of money, is wide receiver 58 in ECR. Wan'Dale Robinson is 75. Sterling Shepard is good, but he's long in the tooth. 29 years old this year. 89. Then Slayton, Colin Johnson, Richie James, CJ Board, who had a little action last year, like David Sills from West Virginia is on this roster. It's got this is a upside roster. Tony Robinson, those guys, and Golladay. I mean, Golladay almost has to outperform what he did last year. Maybe he won't. Maybe he's just done. But I feel like he's got to get better than he was last year. I think he really did not like the coaching staff that he walked into last year, and now there's a new one. But Pat, when you look at this Giants wideout situation, are you drafting any of these guys for dynasty? Do you want to take an upside swing on Tony, even though he doesn't really like playing for the Giants right now? I mean, these are a lot of decent weapons, but none of them is outstanding right now at all.
Yeah, I'm hoping the Tony thing works out, because I'm excited by what that guy showed in weeks 4 and 5 last year, and just like that springy, crazy athleticism, and the 189-yard game against Dallas, and the other, I think it might have been against Washington, the other big game he had. Like, I'm excited by what we saw, and I don't like that he had all those injury problems down the stretch, and it wasn't just one injury. It was like a medley of 7 different things, including COVID. But just like the spring in that dude's, like the way he just catches the ball and like explodes from there. I'm kind of excited by that. I'm even a little bit interested in Golladay. I mean, not like a premium dynasty asset, because he's getting a little older now, but I mean, he was an exceptional contested catch guy, and actually one of the things Daniel Jones has done pretty well, and there aren't many so far, is
throw a contested football.
Throw the deep ball. Like, his deep ball efficiency has actually been above average. So maybe a little hope that he and Golladay can be sort of a good match. And Wan'Dale, I know people are excited about him, and there was some buzz about him coming out of the OTAs, but man, like the prototype is not good for a dude who's 5'8" and 179 pounds. Like, the track record for those guys. I went back and looked. There's only been 1,000-yard season by a receiver 5'8" or shorter in the Super Bowl era, and that was someone named Richard Johnson. Even though I'm old, like Richard Johnson and the Lions 1989, I don't even remember that dude.
That's not a real person.
Yeah, exactly. And if you stretch it out to 5'9", you get 37,000-yard seasons from guys like that over 56 Super Bowl era seasons, and it's only 9 players in totality. And same with weight. Like, if you have guys 180 pounds or less, 19,000-yard seasons spread among 6 different players. So maybe there's a chance that he's the next Mark Clayton, Gary Clark, Steve Smith, but like, you're facing some uphill odds there. So I'm not crazy interested in Wan'Dale.
I love that is a pull of a stat, Pat. I love that. That is great. Shane, when you look at this scenario with New York, Tony is buyable at 47 for sure, because the upside is there. Kenny Golladay is, until he completely falls off, I don't know if he's going to get cheaper than this. Wan'Dale's a rookie and cheap. Sterling Shepard could be good for another couple years, and he's cheap. Like, these are affordable assets, specifically in dynasty leagues. Is there any you're excited about?
Oh, excited are different. completely different sentence. No, I'm actually Kadarius Toney too, right? Like those 2 games. It was 2 games, and that's all it was. And we have to remind ourselves before we get too over the moon with the guy. But he was really good in those 2 games. Galladay, I think I've given up on. Like the guy was a dog in Detroit the last year there, and then he was a dog in New York last year. That's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I was excited about Wan'Dale Robinson until Pat just completely eviscerated any chance that he had. I mean, because he's fun. He has a good college profile. It's just that he's a very little man. But it's the new NFL, Pat. So now they like people our size. Well, height and weight. Yeah, I got a little more weight than him.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Kadarius Toney is the only one I'm probably buying at cost, and the one that I think has the upside to really pay off on that ADP.
Yeah, I mean, I am very interested in Wan'Dale too, but I'm not very high on him either. So I'm with you guys. It's Kadarius for me, and I almost kind of wish that Kadarius would end up on a different team because I think Slayton has huge drops, but the guy gets open. I like Colin Johnson, my guy from Texas too. He could be a big red zone target, but these are guys that are only coming in probably in an injury replacement scenario here. Let's go to Commanders running backs. And the reason I put this one on here is because I am just so different than everybody else on this scenario, specifically long-term. Antonio Gibson is going to be the guy there. His ECR is 16. That's a very high top 2 RB, right? But Brian Robinson is at 50. McKissick is at 54. I like Robinson way more, and I don't really like McKissick after last season. Last season he was great, but he only lasted 11 games. He's a one-trick pony. He really is a one-trick pony. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can line up as a receiver too, but they extended Terry. Jahan Dotson they drafted. Curtis Samuel's coming back off an injury. I mean, I know we've heard that a million times, but Diami Brown is still there too, and he's going to look for an expanded role this year. I just think there are fewer balls to go around for him to catch. Brian Robinson is a 3-down type of back. He is definitely going to be a goal line option for this team, especially with Antonio Gibson and his skinny legs. You don't want him getting hurt. So I'm really into Brian Robinson. I think he's going to be a great option here. And we even heard Ron Rivera talking about them as a 1-2 punch. So I may be beating a dead horse here, Pat. I know you've heard me say it a million times because I say it on, I feel like every show we do, but I am drafting Brian Robinson in every format, specifically in Dynasty too.
I like him a lot. A big thumper, big downhill guy who catches passes. So, I mean, had he gone to a better spot, like he would be, imagine if he had gone to the Texans with the enthusiasm we're seeing for Dameon Pierce right now, like what we get for Robinson, who I think going into the draft was regarded as the better running back prospect. But I'm with you on having no interest in McKissick, a guy who just has no hope of elevating to anything close to a featured role or even like really a committee back. He's just stuck in that passing down role, and he's getting older. So
he averaged over 10 points a game last year. I don't want to take too much away from him because he's got it in him, but he's very specific role, and I think that role is evaporating in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, he can get like 10 points in a single drive, and you'd see him do that a lot of the times when they were in the hurry up, like at the end of a half or at the end of a game.
4 catches and score. Yeah.
Right. He would pile up points fast. So Gibson is the interesting guy here, and a guy who I hate his situation, but he's 6 feet, 228 pounds, just turned 24, 99th percentile speed score, and he's got a history as a wide receiver, so we know he can catch passes. But this is going to be interesting because Shane and I play in a league together where we just made a big deal involving Antonio Gibson.
Ooh.
And our deal was this. And Shane traded me straight up Antonio Gibson. I don't think we had any throw-ins in this deal, Shane. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Antonio Gibson for a late first-round draft pick that Shane immediately turned into James Cook. So, boss, who would you rather have, Gibson or James Cook?
Man, I feel I'm the James Cook guy. I feel like too. I think I'm higher than anyone on him in ECR. I would rather have Gibson slightly. I think Gibson we've seen him do it. He's more guaranteed. But I like James Cook to take over Devin Singletary in his role by the end of this season. I don't think that'll be close. I think James Cook will be a very, very good running back. That's close, but I think I'd lean on Gibson because of his, the fact that he's done it before at the NFL level. Shane, I like this trade. This is interesting. Is Cook the one you were aiming for when you did this trade, or was this like you did the trade and then you ended up with Cook?
Oh, no. I was targeting Cook. And Pat forgot there was a second hand.
Oh, this was great. And then so Shane in the next round rubs my nose in it by drafting Brian Robinson.
Yes.
Oh, I love that role. I love that.
Pat, you just crushed my Wan'Dale Robinson hopes and dreams. So here, just a little bit about Mr. Gibson last year. He was the RB17, right? That's not bad. He was 25th in yards per reception for running backs. That's not great. His 2.38 yards created per rushing attempt was 38th in the league, and then he was 40th in points per opportunity. So any ding to his volume is really going to hurt him. And Brian Robinson, yeah, ding, ding, ding. I think he's just going to be stealing touches left and right.
You didn't even mention the fumbling problem, Shane. I mean, you're going easy on me. You're giving me the kid gloves.
I'm just giving you just the raw stats, right? Fumbling's narrative. He does fumble a lot, and he has shins that are made of paper mache. So
that's why I said the skinny legs, man. He's got them chicken legs for sure.
Right. So I think Brian Robinson's going to steal a ton of work from him. And Brian Robinson quickly became one of my favorite buys in this rookie class. In some, depending on how deep the league is, 12, 14, 16 teams, 14 teams, definitely. I was grabbing him in the second round. Like, that's how high I am on him. I think he's going to see a ton of work. And Gibson's just going to break a lot of people's hearts, and it's not going to be mine because I got out on him. I was all in love with him before last year, and then he just didn't show it.
So where would you rank him? Is he like a low end RB2 to you, Shane, or is he a high end RB3? Where would you rank Gibson moving forward?
I mean, so mid RB2, low end RB2, and
so this 16 is kind of fine.
Yeah. I mean, in that range, the range is fine. It's just I generally don't even pay that at that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm never going to draft that running back probably. There's a good chance unless somehow he falls. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll get him 4 rounds after he should go. I guess people forgot he was there. Because I'll probably end up drafting a guy like Brian Robinson much later and be like, all right, I think he's just going to take his job.
I mean, I think that's within the realm of possibility for sure. I think he could definitely steal his job. Have you rostered McKissick anywhere, or are you agreeing with Pat and I, and he's just kind of out for you?
Yeah, look, McKissick was fun when he was going to Buffalo. I was like, oh, that's interesting. When he decided to go back to Washington, I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. And then when they drafted Brian Robinson, I said, oh, never mind. Yeah, he's done. It's like you said, he's a one-trick pony. He's Theo Riddick, right?
Yeah.
Theo Riddick was fun for 2 seasons, maybe 3 seasons. I don't remember. There's always a Theo Riddick guy where he gives you 2 or 3 seasons and you're like telling yourself like, oh, there's no reason he can't have 100 targets every year. Well, other than he's not really that good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's also, bad teams with these players that are, good but not great will, take advantage. And this is the best guy on our team, so we're going to give him the ball as many times. Now you have many, many weapons here in Washington. So should be interesting. We're going to go to Bears wide receivers next. But before we do, I got to tell you guys about Reality Sports Online. And by now, you've probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contracts, salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Think it sounds complicated? It is not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just takes more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for free FREE in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use the code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. This one should be quick. The Bears have Darnell Mooney and nobody. And when I say nobody, I mean nobody. In ECR, Darnell Mooney comes in at 30 among wide receivers. Scored 200 points last year, had 140 targets, 4 touchdowns, so he can add on to that. He had volume. Well, we all think that, this new staff, all this stuff, they're going to take a wide receiver to help out their young stud quarterback, Justin Fields, and they do not do it. The next highest in ECR wide receiver for this team is Byron Pringle at 110. Then Velus Jones Jr. from Tennessee, the old rookie, who I believe is my age, 39. I think he's actually like 26, but he's 25. He's 119. Daz Newsome is 163. Equinemius St. Brown is 204. Dante Pettis is 208. David Moore could do something. Isaiah Coulter, I liked coming out of the draft. Tajay Sharp, who's had some success, is in here. So, first of all, Pat, do you like Mooney? Is Mooney a guy that you would invest in? And then is there a dart throw in a deeper league that you're taking on any of these other Bears wideouts?
First, before I weigh in on Mooney, I just got to say that it was so satisfying that I've been taking grief from Bears fans here in Chicago about the Packers not drafting wide receivers for years. And then, I was actually at the draft this year with one of my good friends who's a Bears fan, and one of those guys who's been giving me grief about it as they repeatedly passed on wide receivers. It was kind of,
Quick, how many passes is Jaquan Brisker going to catch? Huh? How many? How many do you think?
Jaquan Brisker?
There's the safety. Yeah.
Yeah. So, exactly. I like Mooney, though. I do like Mooney, not just a speed guy. Good route runner and surprisingly tough for a thinner wide receiver, can break tackles and everything. So I do like him. There was a follower who went to Tulane and kind of tipped me off about him, coming out of college. And I appreciate her, very astute, touting Darnell Mooney coming into the league. And Mooney just totally took over that role as the wide receiver one. I think his deep ball ability kind of pairs well with Justin Fields. So I am high on him. I think I'm kind of above where he is. You said wide receiver 30 for Dynasty. I'm maybe a little bit higher than that on him. So high on him, and then I just don't see any hope with any of these other guys, like Velus Jones. Intriguing speed, but like you said, he's a really old prospect. Not a great overall profile. I think if we were going to see Equinemius pop, he was going to do it with Aaron Rodgers in the Green Bay offense and not in this offense. Pringle, another guy who was intriguing maybe a couple of years ago that he could become more, and he's got at least a foothold in the NFL, but I don't see him as any
might get a suspension too. He had some weird offseason.
Yeah, he was doing donuts with a toddler in the car or something like that. I think
decision making needs to be like a 4 in Madden. If he was
allegedly.
I think he was taking the fall for the toddler. The toddler might have actually been driving, so he's probably not as bad as the dude would think.
Hopefully, I've got Mooney just a little bit lower. I got him at 32, but here's a couple of guys that he's around. Just in ECR, Cortland Sutton's at 27, Amari Cooper's at 28, Jameson Williams is at 29. Are you taking Mooney over any of those guys, Pat?
No, I don't think so. Well,
what about?
Hold on, Sutton was one
Cooper's
of them.
a little long in the tooth, yeah. But I have Cooper higher. Jameson Williams, Amari Cooper, Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, actually, so now that I look at it, I do have Mooney below all those guys, and I'm actually a little below consensus, even though I like him.
Shane, what do you think about these guys? Are you taking Mooney over any of those guys? Are you taking all those guys over Mooney?
I don't know. Pat can say he likes Mooney when he's taking Cortland Sutton and Amari Cooper over him, but I'll take him over Amari Cooper and Cortland Sutton. He should see a 30% target share this year, right? And I've brought up I've made fun of him a little bit that he's a wide receiver 3 that masqueraded as a wide receiver 2 last year. Nothing changed this year. The competition got worse. They said, all right, yeah, here's Allen Robinson. Instead of him, we're going to have Velus Jones Jr., who I had to look up when they drafted. And I think I'm pretty deep dynasty guy. I play a bunch of Devy leagues. Guess what? He was still available in every one of my rookie drafts. That's Devy.
Wow.
Doing it somehow. Real quick, Byron Pringle will give you at least one 20-point game at some point this season because he does it every year, just so that we can write him up in the fantasy waiver wire articles the following week. And he completely just gives you a donut the next week.
Yeah.
But no, I like Mooney at that price. I'd take him over Amari Cooper. I'll trade him straight up if I could get Mooney back for Cooper. I gotta look at Pat's roster, see if he's got any Cooper.
It's funny because
maybe I could send him.
I didn't even realize on my ranks I have Mooney at 32, I have Sutton at 33, and Cooper at 34. So I have them all kind of right in a row. What about here's two rookies? You're taking Sky Moore over Mooney, or are you taking Mooney over Sky Moore?
I fell in love with Sky Moore, which is pretty funny because the night he was drafted, I tweeted out that everyone in the dynasty community was going to overdraft him. And then I became everyone and have completely overdrafted him. I have a sickness like most dynasty players. Rookies are infallible.
Yeah.
And I see nothing but upside, right? Mm-hmm. And all I can see is ceiling with Mooney. So all I can see with Mooney is like he can get the 16 points a week. I can see him do that. But Sky Moore, I mean, he's with Patrick Mahomes. He could maybe get the 20 points a week.
Maybe he's Tyreek Hill. Maybe he is.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'd take Sky Moore, but luckily I don't think I'd have to do it straight up.
What about Jahan Dotson, one more rookie against Mooney?
Man, I should like Dotson a lot more than I do. I think I would take Mooney, though.
I mean, the quarterback situation in Washington's rough. It's Carson Wentz or Taylor Heineke. So, it's not good there. Maybe it's probably Mr. Outside hire next year, a free agent or a draft pick. But Dotson was amazing at Penn State. He was really, really good against some good competition, too. I have Mooney just slightly higher than Dotson. I have Dotson right behind all those other guys I just mentioned. Fitzy, before we move on to any other situation here, Sky Moore, Jahan Dotson, Darnell Mooney, rank them.
I have got, Mooney 36, Sky Moore 29, Dotson 30.
Okay, so you're taking both rookies over.
Yeah.
Over. Okay. I mean, look, that's fair. I think let me ask you this, one more. Is Darnell Mooney the number one wide receiver on this team in 2 years?
No, I think they're going to take someone next year. Like one of the top guys in a good receiver class.
Same, Shane?
Yeah, if he is, then they really hate Justin Fields. So there'll also be a new quarterback one in Chicago as well.
Which they apparently do, so it's entirely possible.
It's an interesting approach. I got to give him that. Look, let's draft the quarterback and then give him absolutely no help whatsoever and just see what happens.
This is the Packers model. They always make the playoffs, too. So they're taking a page out of their NFC North rival here, and let's go to that situation with the Packers. And the ECR is a little bit jumbled up here. Christian Watson is the highest at 51. I just talked about how it's ugly, but at least the Bears have someone in the top three. Watson is number one at 51. But then the second and third guys are better. Alan Lazard 60. Amari Rogers 95, Romeo Doubs 102, Sammy Watkins is down here all the way at 111, Randall Cobb is 100, so he's at 129, Torres at 160, and then you have three guys that aren't getting ranked by in ECR at all, and Juwan Winfrey, Malik Taylor, Danny Davis, all at the end of the roster, probably special teams guys if they even make the roster here. So Pat, is it all about Christian Watson and everybody else is just a big old question mark? Do you like taking Lazard because he's coming at a deal as a low end wide receiver 5 here, or what do you think about this whole Packers wide receiver scenario for your boys?
So Watson for sure is really interesting because just the size and the speed combination, and that he had a really good Senior Bowl week. Like it wasn't just the pure testing, like he actually got it done and was voted, I think, the best wide receiver at Senior Bowl week by the cornerbacks who were there. So, and it's maybe going to be an adjustment. Like we expected that the Packers might go after a more polished guy, that like Chris Olave seemed like he would have been the perfect pairing. And then they go and get maybe one of the least polished guys, a guy coming from, North Dakota State and hasn't played against great competition and didn't get a lot of targets at North Dakota State and is basically just this physical marvel. That's going to be really interesting. It might take a little time for him to get going. Romeo Doubs is pretty interesting too. As Carson Strong's guy and, a guy who I think led all, I think I've dropped this stat, that he led all college receivers in yardage and catches on post patterns. So maybe he's the new MVS basically. Lazard it's funny, man. And I think he's going to trip up more people in redraft than in Dynasty. But that a receiver whose greatest NFL attribute was his blocking is being projected for this number one role this year. And I just think he's like going to be such a trap. Like, I just don't think there's that much upside in any league where you have to like make the decision whether to put him in your starting lineup every week. I just think he's going to disappoint you more weeks than not. So, that's it, man. Like, I wouldn't be totally shocked if like Sammy Watkins wound up being the number one receiver for the Packers this year, but I also wouldn't be shocked. Hurt. Yeah. And I wouldn't be shocked if the leading receiver had like, 643 yards for the Packers this year. And it was just spread among 5 receivers, a couple of tight ends, the 2 backs. I think it's just going to be a
we can't have that for fantasy, Pat. We got to have some good players out of here, right? Come on.
Like Rodgers, you'd like to think Rodgers is going to turn one of these guys into a 1,000-yard receiver, but I don't know, man. Unless Watson hits right away, it's hard to see.
Yeah, I mean, Shane, is it just Watson and you're not interested in anybody else? Will you take a flyer on Dubs or anybody else here?
I'll take a flyer on Dubs. One thing that's interesting about Lazard is so he had a career high 15.3 target share in 2020. And the next year, he had his second lowest target share. So it's like the Packers were like, no, that definitely did not work. We're not going to keep throwing to that guy.
And at the draft, they're like, you know what? Maybe it did work. We'll go back to him. He's had that target share before. It's fine, right? So
I like Dubs cheap, right? Because I can get him in 4th, 5th round of rookie drafts, and that's basically free. So that's fine. At that point, you're just taking shots, and you can do worse than tying a shot to Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, if Watson, as long as Watson doesn't drop everything in sight, run the wrong routes, he's obviously the most physically gifted. I mean, the dude's a specimen. We just need him to catch the ball a little bit and run the correct routes. And he could have a massive year, or he could run the wrong route in week 1 and we don't see him for 5 weeks.
I think the drops would be worse for him. Like, you run the wrong route. Okay, you're a rookie. You're figuring it out. But if you're wide open and it hits your hands and hits the ground, Rodgers is going to be mad. So
we saw that with MVS, though, for several years. And Rodgers kept talking him up, even though people say that, like, Rodgers didn't trust MVS. Rodgers was always talking up MVS, and, his snap counts remained respectable.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. I mean, because Watson has all the talent.
What you got to hope with Watson, right? So he had a high drop rate in college, but you have to also look at the amount of targets that he had, or amount, you know what I mean? Like, it's a small sample size. So, 2 drops is going to like really hit that rate hard. He's just so physically gifted. Like, I got to hope that the coaching staff is like, all right, this is what he's good at. Go do this. And then they do it. And they can use him. We saw that in college, you can use him in the running game too, which is just fun. Someone that big and fast. So I got to think he's going to be a giant part of that offense. I can't imagine he won't be.
It's a great point. Just get him the ball on bubble screens and slants and let him do his thing, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you don't have to make it complicated. Like, hey, go run out there and do a double move, and then here's an option route. Like, no, don't make it overly complicated.
If he keeps dropping the ball, they'll run him. They'll run reverses with him and stuff. Do something. Just put the ball in his hand so he doesn't have to catch it. They'll make it work. I'm confident in that. So Watson is a guy too. I'm a little higher than ECR on him. I think I have him at 42 in his ECR. What did I say it's 50? So so I'm 51. So I'm much higher on him. He's got a ton of upside. I mean, what is the ceiling for Watson? What is, like, is it wide receiver 1? Is it high end wide receiver 2? Like, what do you see his absolute ceiling at, Shane?
I mean, that size and speed combination, if he actually puts it together, a wide receiver 1. We've kind of already seen it in DK Metcalf had a wide receiver 1 type season, right?
Yeah.
A wide receiver 1 season. I think that's what we could see with him. Like, yeah, he's raw, and that's not great because he's an old college prospect. But if he puts it together, I mean, he couldn't be with a better quarterback, right? And, if he's gonna show the guy he'll work. I have no idea about Aaron Rodgers. He's just weird, but whatever. But he couldn't be. There's not many quarterbacks you would like to be tied to more than him, right? So if he can just put it together, if he just works at it, like the dude could be a wide receiver 1. I think it's more likely he's going to be boom bust, and we'll see a lot of high scoring weeks and then other weeks where we're just frustrated that he had 2 receptions for 13 yards.
Yeah, I was going to say 1 for 14. So that's perfect. Yeah. Those are the type of gains that, that's, you take him as a wide receiver 4, wide receiver, maybe a 3. Okay. You can take that. But if you have 1 injury, now he's your second, you're starting to get really frustrated. Pat, do you have the same, wide receiver 1 upside for Watson? I mean, this, it just feels like to me, Claypool. Claypool had a huge rookie season where he had 10 touchdowns and everybody went crazy and everyone's trading for him. And now, after his goofball year last year, where he did not endear himself to any fantasy managers, he has taken a huge hit. So it kind of feels like similar trajectory, but both these guys still have giant upsides.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of this fantasy baseball site I subscribe to, Baseball HQ, and when they evaluate rookie prospects, they do like the ceiling is on a 1 to 10 scale, and then they have a letter grade for the probability that those guys reach it. Like a guy might have a low ceiling but a high probability he gets there, like he's some sort of gamer, and they give him a 7A. But then there's the guy who's got like 10 talent, but they don't know what the odds are. He's some like Cuban prospect who's really only played against lower level competition or something, and he's like a 10C or a 10D. And I think Watson is kind of one of those guys who's like a 10C or a 10D. Like the sky is the absolute limit, but what are the odds that he hits that ceiling? Probably not great, but man, I mean, dynasty people are always going to chase that upside.
Let's go over to, get your puke buckets ready. The Falcons running backs here, which is just disgusting. Cordero Patterson, converted wide receiver, played running back for them last year. I know Sleeper app just said that they are going to give him only a running back designation, which is just kind of interesting. I mean, the guy still caught 52 passes last year and, put up over 1,100 total yards and 11 touchdowns. He had a fantastic season. But he's, 32. He's an older guy, has not taken a beating like a running back has. Even last year, he had 153 carries, which is a lot, and over 200 touches for him. But, it's just a different beast playing running back. So I'm a little worried for him. They did draft Tyler Algier out of BYU, who is the darling of a lot of people because, like Shane said before, you can see the path to him getting a bunch of touches for this team. Calvin Ridley's gone, so maybe you want to keep Cordero more as a wideout, especially if one of these guys picks it up. But then they have Damian Williams, the vet, comes over from KC, kind of an insurance policy. Quadri Allison has done a little work here. Avery Williams and Caleb Huntley are still on this roster, but probably nothing here. Pat, what are you doing with Falcons RBs? Anything?
Oh my God, nothing. Like it's Algier, and I have no idea what to make of Algier, and don't even want to pass judgment until we see the preseason. Which it's tough to do if you're deciding whether to take him in a rookie draft. And I decided
his ECR's 51. So that's a running back 5. That's like the last RB on your roster, and that's a fine spot to have him, right?
That's I don't know, man. Like that might even be too high because people chase this opportunity on bad teams, and even if he is the lead guy in a committee, and I certainly can't see him having some sort of Derrick Henry type workload. Even if he's the lead guy in this offense, what does that mean? Is that like a week in, week out starter? Like I suppose so.
So let me just give you a couple guys that Tyler Algier's around. By the way, I put this together yesterday, and he's dropped a couple spots with people updating their ECR. He's now at 53. But the 3 guys ahead of him are McKissick, Edwards, and Brian Robinson, who we would all much rather have. And then the 3 below him are Sony Michel, Nyheim Hines, Chuba Hubbard. I think I would take him over everybody but Robinson.
Everyone but Robinson and Hines for me this year, because Hines is still kind of young, and I like how they're talking about using him with Matt Ryan, who's going to be dumping off a lot. And generally, I don't love the guys like Hines who can't ascend to featured back, but I think Hines is a big enough role there and is still young and is in an offense that's going to dump off a lot. So.
And Hines featured in college. I mean, I know it was it's college and the NFL's different, but he played a huge role at NC State when he was there. So
And then Boggs Cordero, like, I mean, if they're talking about putting him back a wide receiver, that just totally evaporates his value. Not to mention the fact that, I mean, a player profiler has done like research on what the age apex is for running back, and it's like 24.8 or 25. Right. He's like almost 8 years past that, like two Olympic cycles past the age apex for that guy. And people like in dynasty startups still will take him in like the late teen rounds. And I'm just like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, I mean, he's not long for the NFL. I mean, I guess the good thing about Cordero Patterson is that he was so bad in Minnesota, he didn't get any touches. So there wasn't like a lot of wear and tear on his body. So maybe he's not like a normal NFL use and abuse 32. But I mean, what do you give him? 30? That's still old.
Look, we're going to look back on his 2021 as like a Toby Gerhart, like one hit wonder season.
Peyton
like
Hillis.
Yeah, where did that come from? It was glorious, but then, the follow-up is not going to be very satisfying.
Shane, you said you love the upside of these rookies. Is Tyler Algier a guy that you've been rostering or no?
No. Yeah. So Pat brought up a good point about how, just sometimes on a bad roster, a running back will get to be the running back one, but it almost doesn't matter. Like, where did that happen last year? Oh, Atlanta. Mike Davis. Yeah, no.
Oh, I was all in too. He was good in Carolina. I thought he was good in Carolina. He can be good in Atlanta. Nope.
Yeah. Nope. I didn't see him face planting that badly. Right. I definitely wasn't in on him, but same thing with Algier. Like I'm not especially impressed with him. I mean, he's a RB 53. You said. I mean, so the price is cheap, so he's probably a running back that I end up with on my roster only because I'm cheap when it comes to running back, and that's about what I want to pay. I take Brian Robinson. I wish Brian Robinson was there. Never mind. Brian Robinson was there. He'd be 50. Top 30.
Yeah, he was 50. So I mean, you've been in Atlanta. I know what you mean, but he was 50. Like he's in the same range. So
but if he would have got that landing spot, but no, and Cordero Patterson. I mean, so Sleeper's going to leave him at running back. Mm-hmm. Which is fine if he gets 6 to 7 targets a week. I don't care if he ever actually runs the ball.
Both. So he's one of the few exceptions in the NFL that I feel like could qualify at both. And
he did last year. I mean, they got a little run happy with him towards the end of the year, which I didn't enjoy because he's not truly a running back. Like, it's cute when it's like give him like 8 rushing attempts and 7 targets. Like let's keep that split like that. He's fine. I traded him in every league I could last year as soon as I could get any value for him because much like Pat felt and you felt, I'm sure, like, hey, this guy's never been good for the first decade and a half of his career. I'm not going to imagine that now that he's 31, all of a sudden, like he's going to hit a light switch and he's going to be good for the next 6 years. Not drafting.
Yeah, it's ugly there. Let's move to another terrible situation. Keep those puke bags out for the Atlanta Falcons wide receiver situation, because look, at least there's some promise here. Drake London, still awesome, ECR of 19. Then after that, we do have Calvin in here, but obviously Calvin has the huge suspension for gambling, which is, I understand it. I know a lot of people got upset by this suspension, but he's currently wide receiver 50 for whatever reason. I think just because I was looking at the roster and he wasn't on it, I didn't list him here, but he's at wide receiver 50. And then you have Brian Edwards, who they traded for at 91, Olamide Zacchaeus at 149, Auden Tate, some people in on, Frank Darby, Demary Bird, Geronimo Allison. It's a mess. So it looks like Drake London is your one. Then, your number one receiving option could be Kyle Pitts, the tight end, who's a top 12 player in most dynasty startups here. But kind of seems like this year it's Drake London or bust. And with all of the weirdness surrounding Calvin Ridley, Pat, is he a guy you grab and stash in a dynasty league, or do you want no part of him since he quit on the Falcons last year and then he got suspended this year? Like, he's just too far out there for you to even contemplate rostering.
His dynasty ECR is wide receiver 50. I've got him at wide receiver 50. I mean, it's just hard to say with the problems he had last year. Hey man, I mean, I'm not going to knock a guy for mental health issues, but the gambling thing was a terrible judgment error. I mean, like, even if it was small stakes or whatever, you just like, if you know who Pete Rose is, you can't bet on football, man. I mean, that's just an obvious
It's the
thing.
only thing that could kill the NFL. It really is. Like finding out that the games are rigged is the only thing that can do it. So I understand it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you just gotta wonder if like his dedication to his craft is going to be there after a judgment error like that. So a unique talent for sure. But like, I don't know if I ever thought he was going to develop into one of the creme de la creme receivers. So I'm maybe a little more hesitant on him. Like, I don't think I'm actively trying to get him on the cheap. And it seems like in a lot of the leagues I'm in, when he has been involved in a trade, the price isn't like, he's not going that cheaply. I mean, I think people who are rebuilding see him as a nice piece to a rebuild. And it makes sense for the people going for it this year to deal him off to a rebuilding team, but it just doesn't seem like the price on him is discounted that much.
I mean, he's going as a wide receiver 5, high end wide receiver 5 at wide receiver 50. Shane, are you in on Calvin Ridley at all whatsoever?
No.
Just
yeah, I mean, it's like depends on the gambling. It's an indefinite suspension, right? So it's at least a year. He's no guarantee that he's coming back. When he does come back, let's just say, for instance, he does come back. It'll be next year. He'll be 28 years old. Wide receivers values usually dead about 29 unless you're Devontae Adams, and Calvin Ridley wasn't Devontae Adams. Although heading into last year before everything, I thought there was a chance that he could have been the wide receiver 1 in fantasy for the season, just with the available targets, but we see how that went. So it'll be 29 at this time next year. So even if he's reinstated, or 28 this time next year when he's reinstated, I don't know. I can't see the long-term value there. And if I have a rebuilding roster, I definitely want to hold on to the picks and just use them on some other assets. I have them on a couple rosters. I haven't even tried to trade them because it's just, I mean, at that point, just hold on to them because I'm probably going to get a third, and a third is pretty useless. And I'm not going to pay a second for him. So he's one of those players that's in that weird zone where I probably can't get enough for him to make it worthwhile to move, and I certainly wouldn't pay enough for him to get him off another roster.
Let's go upside then. Let's talk about Drake London. Shane, ECR 16. I have him at 17. He's the number 1 rookie on most boards. I like Jameson and Traylon a little bit more than I like Drake. I just think he has that big man downside because you're somewhere in between Mike Evans and N'Keal Harry, right? When you're a guy of that size. And we've seen very few Mike Evans, Michael Pittman types. We've seen a ton of N'Keal Harrys. I mean, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, you've seen in Philly for sure. So who has since moved to tight end. But what do you think of London? Do you think he deserves this high range of wide receivers here? Or would you put him more of a wide receiver 3 than a wide receiver 2?
No, I think he deserves this. I mean, when we're looking at wide receivers, we're shooting for upside, right? We're shooting for wide receivers we think could be wide receiver 1s. And that's kind of where we're pegging him. We think, at least some of the community thinks he could be even a low-end wide receiver 1. Considering the situation in Atlanta, there's really just him and Kyle Pitts. At some point, they're going to have a quarterback too, I assume. Just because that's how most NFL teams operate. So I'm fine with that price because if it hits, he's going to outproduce that ADP. If he doesn't, it's not like you've overpaid so much that it's going to kill you. It's not like you're spending a 1st-round draft pick on him, a 2nd-round draft pick, and a startup. If you're doing that and he doesn't hit, then you're definitely going to have problems. But consider where he's priced. I think it's fine. And he's a guy I came around on, even though I'm very scared of the J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, N'Keal Harry, Laquan Treadwell corollary, where they can't actually get open from
Mike
people.
Evans and Michael Pittman too. DK Metcalf's a big guy, so
right.
Yeah, there's plenty of guys.
It can happen. So. Yeah. And that's what I'm thinking. Like, he just dominated his collegiate profile is just so dominating that I'm like, all right, let me lean on this, and I'm just going to hope that maybe he can separate a little more than we think. And when he gets to the pros, he's going to be able to, and he's not going to have to switch to tight end in year 4 of his career.
And I'm actually a little bit higher. I misread. He's ECR 19. Actually, it slipped down to 20. in the last day, and I have him at 17. But the guys around Drake London Fitz are Rashad Bateman, Mike Evans, and Terry McLaurin just ahead of him. And then the three guys below him are Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, Jerry Jeudy. So I know there's some names in there that you like. Where are you putting Drake London on your list, and how do you like him fitting into that group of ECR?
Boggs, I too have Drake London at wide receiver 17. I've got Bateman at 20, McLaurin at 21, and Evans at 25. And like Evans is the interesting. And by the way, why are all the slower contested catch guys always from the Pac 12? They might as well just go ahead and break up that conference. Oh wait, sorry, that might have been that might have hit close to the bone for someman. So yeah, I mean, I should say they're from the Big Ten, since that's
Big
where the USC is going to be operating. Man, it's hard to argue with what he did in 8 games last year. 88 catches in 8 games.
They knew it was coming to him too. That's the thing. That's the thing for me, is like, the opposing defense, even though they're bad Pac-12 defenses, they know Drake London is getting 15 targets a game, and they still can't stop him. That was the thing for me, is he doing it against 2 guys out there most snaps.
So stylistically, even if he's not an exact comp for Mike Evans, I do think he's that same kind of guy who could possibly just be too much for most NFL cornerbacks to handle, just like this tough physical mismatch. So I'm pretty excited about him. Like, I think he's going to be a good player. The thing is, you're going to probably have to wait for him to realize the ceiling. I don't think it's going to happen right away with Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder. Hopefully his quarterback is like CJ Stroud in 2023. I don't know. So like, I'm very optimistic about him long term though.
His quarterbacks were in USC. He had
Slovis last year.
Keaton Slovis, who no one likes anymore.
Not any people used to like him.
Asked him to leave. Yeah, but they asked
He's
him to leave.
He's at Pitt now. Yeah.
They said, could you just please go into the transfer portal?
And he did.
You're not
then
good.
He left.
So I mean,
well, when you
I
get Caleb Williams,
I don't think Mariota or Ridder can be worse than that, right?
No,
it can't be. Just feed the guy with targets and let him just destroy people. He's a monster. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it takes him more than a year. But yeah, his quarterback play's not that bad. It's improved since college.
Is there any other dart throw guy you like here, Shane? Maybe even if it's just for a year. Are you taking a shot on Edwards or Zacchaeus, or anyone thinking, hey, there's opportunity. Maybe one of these guys will win out.
So here's my problem is I've looked into this stuff way too much, and I see that when you're a bad rookie, it pretends a bad career. When you're a bad sophomore after a bad rookie, you're basically have no shot at fantasy relevance. That said, I can understand if you wanted to, like, and if you had to have one guy, only had one of these guys on your roster, like a Brian Edwards, sure, hold on to that dream at, roster spot 30. But just know that he should probably be your first cut. For whatever running back you're going to, third string running back that you're hearing good things about.
You're cut for Kennedy Brooks week 1. Yeah, right. Exactly.
You don't even, if you want to take a shot on a wide receiver, you definitely don't want it to be one from an offense like this, right?
Yes. Yeah. Very true.
Look, sometimes it's okay to just limit the fantasy players that you're targeting to a team to 2 players, Kyle Pitts and Drake London. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably more upside on Josh Gordon because he's in Kansas City than anybody else on this roster. So I'm with you, Pat. I'm assuming you're the same way. No Atlanta dart throws.
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if maybe during the course of this season, people in the running for something now threw a couple of fab dollars at Auden Tate, who I know Ian Harditz of PFF has had a thing for a while. And I've actually heard Bengals beat writers say that he was like a practice all-star. And
a big target. He was good at Florida State.
Yeah, and he could just kind of never get going, or he'd get a little window of opportunity and he'd get hurt or something. Like something always seemed to happen to him. So maybe in a wide receiver core this bleak, he might have a chance to get on the field more. Mildly interested in him, just worth keeping on the radar.
So 2 more scenarios here, and this first one it's not really a hard to read situation. It's a hard to read situation if Alvin Kamara gets a 6-game suspension, which we kind of heard might be in the hopper here, which hopefully is not, because I don't. But it looks pretty bad. The stuff that I had read before seeing the video was that, well, this is probably going to get thrown out. This was self-defense. And then you see the video and you see 4 dudes jumping one dude. And you're like, well, this is not looking good for Mr. Kamara. And, 6 games seems like it might be lenient at this point. And his ECR is still 10 among running backs. I have dropped him prodigiously because I do think he's going to get a lengthy suspension. I dropped him down to like high-end wide receiver 3 at this point. They got nothing behind him. They got Mark Ingram, the corpse of Mark Ingram, who was born in the 80s, and so was I. So that's not a good scenario. Tony Jones is not good. He wasn't good at Notre Dame. I don't know what he's doing on the Saints roster. They picked up Abram Smith. They signed Devine Azigbo and Dwayne Washington, guys with some NFL experience, but I don't think the running back who opens up as a number 1 is on the roster right now because Kamara is going to be suspended. I think this is a prime spot for Dearness Johnson to get traded. I think this is, we've heard the Browns may want to trade Dearness. I think the Saints need a backup to Kamara, and he's proven to be a guy that can take some of the workload, but he's not there now, and who knows who it's going to be. I just don't really like anyone outside of Kamara here, Pat. Do you trust anybody else on this roster?
Yeah, that Dearness thought is kind of interesting since, they've got Jerome Ford now to be their number 3. So, not really. I mean, Mark Ingram, the thought of Mark Ingram operating as like this heavy duty back early on while granted, the guy is, I think, one of the top 4 active rushers right now. I think it's Ingram, Melvin Gordon, Ezekiel Elliott, and Derrick Henry. But yeah,
feels like he won the Heisman in the 90s, by the way.
Right. Generally, running backs in their almost mid-30s are not great investments, and there's no one else on this roster. So I'm a little higher there on Kamara than you are. I like the profile for most.
He's still good. But
most
6
dynasty
games
leagues
huge.
it is huge, but maybe just because he has not carried the ball a lot up until last year, like he'd always kind of been used sparingly in that, hasn't taken as much punishment as a lot of the more valuable fantasy backs have. So maybe he's going to age a little bit better, especially with that pass catching ability. He's still, one of the preeminent pass catchers at the position. And dynasty leagues are PPR leagues generally. So, I've hoped that he's going to age a little more gracefully. But yeah, the 6 gamers, at least a 6 gamer, I would think. That's going to be a big hit for this year.
Yeah. Shane, what do you think of this Kamara situation first? And then anybody behind Kamara in New Orleans just looks rough.
I'll go with Abram only because I haven't seen him fail yet. And I've seen literally
the rookie glasses. Yeah.
Everyone else on that list I've seen fail repeatedly, and actually in these same circumstances, like Divine a bit as Zubo. I feel like we've talked about, like, not me, us 3, but just in general, I feel like he's been brought up before in other circumstances.
He's had opportunities. Yeah.
Right. Mark Ingram is probably fine for a couple games, and then it's going to give out. That's what happens to 32-year-old men that are playing an NFL sport. And Kamara, I was out on after last year. I just have a hard and fast rule with 26-year-old running backs is I don't believe in them because not since the days of Matt Forte and players like that did running backs age gracefully. Now, obviously this is a different crew. We got like Dalvin Cook and Joe Mixon and Alvin Kamara, so maybe they'll reset that. But until I see it, I still don't believe it. And I know the dynasty community largely doesn't because I can't even trade him for a single 23 first in most of my leagues.
Wow. 23 class is going to be good, but I mean, that's brutal.
Yeah. So, I mean, but you're in a situation where you have to hold him, right? Because his value can't get worse than where it is right now. He is going to get suspended at least 6 games. Like there's no way. That video was horrific, like you said. And whenever there's video, that makes it worse because we're visual creatures. If we can see it, it's a lot worse than hearing about it. So I can't imagine he doesn't get some suspension. But then you know what? He'll serve a suspension. He'll come back in week 7, week 8, whenever, and he'll go out there and drop 25 points. And someone in your league's going to go, I could use that, and then you can get a 23 first for him.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an interesting scenario. Hopefully, I mean, I think someone will get cut and the Saints will add someone or they'll trade for someone. I don't think they go into the year with Ingram and Tony Jones as the backfield. If they do, they're going to be a passing team, which was not the case last year at all with all them broken quarterbacks that they had. The last one, we'll go quick on this one since we're already over an hour here, but it's Seattle running backs, and basically it's Penny versus Walker. Walker is ECR 18. Rashad Penny is ECR 37. I mean, I just can't imagine that anyone is realistically trading Rashad Penny. And I know we hear a lot of he was great at the end of last year, and he was. And all of like the underlying statistics, all the PFF stuff looks great on Rashad Penny. He is a very good running back. He will not stay on the field for you. He has proven it to us. This is the fool me once, shame on you. The fool can't get fooled again. You know, you don't get fooled by Penny again in my eyes. Pat, are you any different? Or this is all Walker and no Penny to you, right?
No, I think the ECR's got it pretty right here for Dynasty, and it'll be interesting to see if anyone gets thrown off the trail in redraft, because I know the reports are like, oh, Penny's way ahead of Kenneth Walker, even though Walker is this fantastic prospect. But you said it with the injuries, Bog. It's, just to drop another baseball comparison, since you're a baseball guy, a starting pitcher who's had injury problems throughout his career, Steven Strasburg. Is he suddenly going to rediscover like good health when he's, in his late 20s or whatever? Like, it's not going to happen. So
guy had carpal tunnel syndrome. Him and librarians.
So
I mean, come on.
Yeah, I'm just not really interested in Penny, and I'm very interested in Walker.
I'm the exact same way. Very high on Walker, very low on Penny. I got Penny at 45. I just do not believe he's going to do anything. I mean, and I'm very, very high on Kenneth Walker. So, Shane, where are you at on Walker? I have him at 17. Like we said, his ECR is 18. Are you like high end RB2 on Walker, and are you out on Penny as well?
Yeah, look, I love Penny, and when he came into the league, like there wasn't anyone that was as high on him as me. Like I was like all in, like this dude is special. But unfortunately, just like Pat mentioned, Steven Strasburg, who I drafted in my fantasy.
Dude, I took a day off of work to watch his major league debut, and it was awesome. He had 14 strikeouts against the Pirates. Like, I remember it. He was amazing. I was so excited to watch him. Just cannot stay on the field.
I remember the hype for him. So, I drafted him this year because I go, when he comes back, maybe he'll be, Steven Strasburg. He came back for one game. And then I look on my ESPN app and I go, wait, he's on the IL again. I was like, I got like a third of a start out of him. Like, what? All right, just drop this guy. That's how I feel about Penny. If I can get anyone to give me any value for him, they can take it. If not, I'll hold on to him for a couple weeks though, because if it's split for a couple weeks, Penny can survive and look good there. But yeah, Kenny Walker, Kenneth Walker, whatever you want to call him. Ken Walker,
K Walker,
K Walk. I think, he's a lot. I really came around on him. He's definitely going to smash. I think he's going to be in an offense that likes to run the ball. And they've shown that they use unconventional pass catchers at the running back position before in Chris Carson. So I don't see any reason that he can't at least see, some screens, some dump offs. I don't ever expect them to see him split out wide, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him with 40 receptions in a season.
And Seattle's actually investing in their offensive line for a change.
Yeah, now that Russ is gone, which is hilarious, but that's a whole different scenario. So that is going to wrap it up for us. Remember, you can follow us all on Twitter at Bogman Sports, for myself, Pat at Fitz_FF. Fitzy, what do you got coming up this week?
Yeah, man, we're just continuing to crank out content to whet people's appetite, and we've got I've got the Fitz on Fantasy podcast this week with a great guest, Eric Moody. So I hope people will check that out.
And Shane at Shane is the worst. I still feel bad saying it because Shane is the best. Thank you for joining us. And what do you have coming up here in terms of your work?
Oh, well, I'm going to be listening to Fitz on Fantasy with the great guest of Eric Moody. Usual. The Dynasty Trades HQ podcast, going to do a Dynasty intervention this week, couple Dynasty Trades in 5s, and then if things get crazy, me and my buddy Scott will do a Manic and Chill because I don't have much of a social life. So I just like to talk about fantasy football.
Yeah, it is the best. For me, obviously, I'm doing this podcast. I'll be doing the Welsh and I are expanding all of our stuff on Wednesday this week. We are doing 2 hours of live stream Monday through Thursday moving forward. So check that out over at In This League. You can catch me on the baseball side of Fantasy Pros as well on occasion. You can catch me on CFP Winning Edge, ITL IDP, ITL CFF, all kinds of good stuff for you. So just follow me at Bogman Sports and you can see it all. But that will wrap it up for us, and we will see you guys next week. Take it easy, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.